Hey, I'm Devin StGeorge, and this is Visuals.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Visuals. I'm here with Devin StGeorge, talking to him about glass blowing and art in general. Who knows, maybe we'll even see him do some stuff. How long have you been doing art on a level that is what it is now?
The level that it is now, it's more recent, but I've always been working towards getting things to almost be like at least a second source of income. You know, trying to have it be a big part of my life and trying to put a lot of my time into it.
How much time a week would you say you spend making art?
It depends on the week and how things are going with my regular job, but between 5 to 20 hours a week usually.
What was the first piece of art that you remember being really proud of?
There's a painting that was a still life of a bunch of cow bones that I did. Before that, I was never a big fan of painting, and I was never a big fan of still life especially, and I still don't really like still life. Just something about that painting, the way it came out, I'm insanely proud of how that came out.
You work in a lot of different mediums. Rather than ask you what mediums you do work in, what mediums have you not yet touched?
I don't like watercolor. I've only attempted it once or twice, and it's never worked out, and I'm not a fan. Outside of that, it's probably getting into more obscure stuff, like, you know, I've never done jewelry making. I like to at least know how to do just about everything.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, not knowing at least how it's done stresses me out.
What's your favorite medium you're working with right now?
Goes back and forth between the glasswork and sculptural.
What kind of stuff do you do with clay?
I've been making a lot of small sculptural bookends where I'm taking different pop culture characters and making them into bookends. The molds for making like Halloween latex masks. I'm also thinking about sometime soon going larger and actually making outdoor fountains and gargoyles and larger cement pieces.
What got you into working with glass?
I was taking a welding class at the Rochester Arc and Flame Center out in Gates. But when I was there, I was also able to look through the window and see into the room where they were doing open torch or doing glass lessons. So I ended up talking to them and ended up taking a couple sampler classes there. The first time I ever did anything glass work, I just fell in love with it, and it was so much fun.
Where do you draw inspiration from as an artist?
I mean, I like looking around and seeing what types of things other people are creating and partially getting inspiration, but also seeing what's not being made and seeing what kinds of niches I can fill. My day-to-day life of, you know, there's certain things that I like. Let's see what I could do if I can make that in glass. How would I make that in glass? What kinds of techniques would I have to learn? Now that I've learned those techniques, what else can I use those techniques for?
A lot of times when you look for new inspiration in artwork, you look more towards what's missing. Would it be fair to say that as an artist, there's almost an obligation to dive into the unknown like that?
I wouldn't call it an obligation. I think it's very personal in finding your own voice. If somebody wants to stick to things that have been done and that's what's comfortable for them, you know, where they're comfortable and where they're happy making artwork is where they belong. I like turning it into a problem-solving experience of, here's something that doesn't exist, let's try and figure out how to do that.
In the last couple of decades, the world and the way that we receive or perceive the world itself has changed dramatically. How do you feel as though that's affected art making?
I think it's definitely made it a lot more accessible for people, a lot easier for people to start getting their stuff out there, and it also helps people figure out not just what their voice is, but what parts of their voice are actually going to get an audience.
What's one piece that you made that you thought wasn't going to take off at all, and then everybody just kind of ate it up real quick?
I just have a box of scrap glass that's broken and left over from pieces that I finished it and it was just the extra, or I made something and it snapped in half. So I took a bunch of scraps and just mashed together a bunch of hideous scrap pipes. I wanted to have more product and I figured they'd look cool.
Right.
Somebody might want them, and I made a handful of them and they sold like that.
Frankenpipes.
Yeah.
Check them out. You got any more?
I've got half of one right now.
There is in everything a spectrum of existence. Art is no exception. What do you think of either side of the spectrum of art, of, you know, what fine art is defined as, and what, you know, your DIY, doing stuff in your garage, your basement? What do you think defines that difference?
It's such a hard line to find that at this point, I think it's mostly just self-imposed. If I was back here calling myself a fine artist, who really gets to say no? I think that it mostly just is that. There's not a medium fine art, because there's some glass work that is better than most paintings out there. It's not going to be the medium. There's people making fine art and filling museums with literal trash.
Piles of garbage taken from the street corners of New York City.
I'm not saying that to be pejorative. It literally is trash, and people are calling it fine art, and that's what makes it fine art. I'm more comfortable labeling myself as somebody who's just doing this as a hobby. I'm doing this in my own spaces. If somebody wants to look at my stuff and label it high art or fine art, they are welcome to. It's just not going to be the label that I'm choosing for it.
Nobody would know what to call it until they called it something, so it's more of just like a label.
Yeah, it's either going to be imposed by the artist or by the audience.
Where do you see yourself taking art in the next half a decade?
I'd like to just continue moving up. I eventually want to have a more formal glass studio. I'd like to get into casting bronze with some of my clay sculptures.
Do you have any stuff online, or is it more so contact you directly for sales?
Right now it's more so contact me directly for sales or go to one of the shows that I'm going to be at. I've got an Instagram where all of my work can be checked out at. I do have a Facebook page, but I'm kind of moving away from the Facebook page. For all of those, it's just St. George stuff, StGeorge.
And that's all one word.
Yep.
And as it sounds, Saint StGeorge, like Harrison stuff.
Yep. I do too many mediums to. This is St. George glasswork. This is St. George sculpture. It's all under one umbrella.
It's all your stuff.
Yeah.
Alright guys, that does it for this episode of Visuals. I'm Skylar Smith. This is Devin StGeorge. You can check out all his information in the description. Like, subscribe, share. If you'd like to be on an episode of Visuals, go ahead and check that description. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend.